creating curiosity by asking better questions. This is Shed Talk. Laval St. Germain is the only Canadian to have climbed Mount Everest without the use of oxygen, the only person to have climbed and skied Iraq's highest peak, and the holder of the fastest ever crossing of the North Atlantic Ocean by a solo ocean rowboat. Welcome to Shed Talk.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kevin.
Thank you. When I saw your bio, I actually had to ask this question. Is that a real name?
Yeah, that's a real name. Yeah,
it is a real name.
Yeah.
Because when I look at Laval St. Germain, and I had asked a couple people about this, I said, can you tell me, does this name sound like a pilot? Does this sound like an adventurist, an accountant?
Somebody who makes shoes?
Exactly.
I'm told that.
Oh my God. And they said, no, that's totally adventurous. And I went, oh my gosh, what a great name to have.
Yeah, I didn't choose it. It's I'm from a French-Canadian town north of Edmonton. So my dad was born in Alberta. First language was French. His dad was born here. First language was French. My mom was German. The town was surrounded by German farmers. We spoke English at home, but I got this double-barreled French-Canadian name, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then growing up in high school and stuff with a name like that, what were the girls like? Like they must have been all over you.
Yeah, I grew up in a town till I was 11, where my friends were Montoya, Laval St. We all were French Canadians, and that was all. It was totally normal to have my name. I mean, my first name's a little unusual, but I was surrounded by French Canadian names, so I thought it was totally normal. So.
That is awesome. Yeah. Did you also feel as you're growing up with a name like that you actually had to be really focused?
No. I mean, no, not at all. I had a really interesting upbringing. So my dad came from a line of lawyers, and my mom came from a line of farmers. In fact, my dad's grandfather was the first French-Canadian MLA in Alberta. So my dad was a townie, and my mom was somebody from the country. And so I spent all my summers on my grandparents' farm. And then I had a dad who really focused on us reading and education, and that combination, I think, was good for me. So it was a great upbringing in that sense. I had the best of both worlds. I think some of the most important things I've ever learned was on my grandparents' farm, and this is in the days before we had cell phones, before we had like a sort of that nanny state where you couldn't do anything that was dangerous, and we would just roam around all day. We weren't allowed in the house during the day, and we'd be jumping across granaries, we'd be catching mice, we'd be shooting gophers, we'd be riding sheep, we'd be, riding horses all day long. Like it was a great childhood. Yeah.
Can you imagine doing that today?
No, I mean it's too bad. Yeah. You see it now though. You go around any city in North America and you don't see kids anymore outside in playgrounds. Mm-hmm. And if you do, you see little kids playing in a playground with their moms sitting on, or their dads sitting on a park bench looking at their phone. I mean, that's a whole different topic, but yeah.
Oh, that totally is, because as growing older, and I'm 55 years old, and I'm assuming you're right around the 54?
54, yeah.
54 years old, and the stuff that you've done through your life, and then never mind shooting gophers and everything like that. And I'm going to go back, as in the first MLA, that's got to be pretty honorable.
French-Canadian.
Yeah.
In Alberta. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, I didn't do it as my grandpa, but yeah, it was something to be proud of. I guess he was the first mayor of my town as well, and of my hometown. So yeah, I guess that's something to be proud of, but I had probably a bigger impact from my mom's parents, my German grandfather, and hard work and honesty, and he had a real wanderlust, my grandfather. Even though he was a farmer with a great education, they just used all their money to travel. So they'd been all over the world as two farm folk from northern Alberta, which was normal at the time. But I remember as I got older and I started to travel the world and do these adventures, my grandfather would just love to hear my stories and ask me tons of questions, and I think I probably inherited a lot of that.
Oh, that is awesome. Yeah. Now, the greatest adventures that you start getting into, When was the first adventure come into play?
It depends what an adventure is. I mean, my dad was a real outdoorsman, hunting, fishing, canoeing. And I would remember we'd go canoeing on rivers in sort of north central Alberta, the Pembina and the Athabasca River. And I'd, get out of the boat and grab a piece of driftwood and climb up a muddy bank. And I'd really think that I was, on Everest or on K2 and pretty soon I'd get scared and he'd have to come up and rescue me before I tumbled into the river. So it was, that outdoor life is something that was really important to me and to us as a family. And then it turned, we always grew up skiing. So that turned into ski touring, which turned into ski mountaineering. And then it turned into actually mountaineering, climbing mountains all over the world. So I credit that to an outdoor lifestyle. My mom's focus, she was really focused on us being fit, healthy body, healthy mind, she used to say. And so we were active kids and active family into the outdoors and into skiing, and that just sort of evolved.
Now, what about Everest? When did that first come into your head? Said, okay, yes, you talked about I'm going to do Everest here, but the actual, all right, you know what? This is my goal. This is my mindset. I'm going to actually get myself focused to understand that you could actually do anything. To say, you have the guy on the doubt on your shoulder saying, oh, you can't do that. When was that point in time that all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. And at what age? Like, because you would have been young thinking that, like, you'd have to train.
Well, I mean, I always train. I didn't have to train for Everest because I'm always training. I work out every day. I run, I bike. I've been biking to work for over 25 years. So it wasn't like I had to change anything in my training. But Everest was something that was always in the back of my mind. One of my heroes two of my heroes growing up were an Italian mountaineer named Reinhold Messner. He's the first person to climb Everest without oxygen. And he did it solo. And Pat Morrow, who is the first person to ever climb the highest mountain on all 7 continents. And Canadian guy from Kimberley, who I know now. And, reading these guys, and Pat Morrow's also a photographer, and looking at the photos that he took, it was always intriguing to me. I was starting to climb mountains all over the world. I think by the time I'd climbed Everest, I'd climbed maybe 5 of the 7 summits. And in the late winter of 2009, I poured Janet, my wife, a Luigi Bosca Malbec. I still remember this. And we were sitting at the kitchen counter at the island, and I poured her another one. She thought I had ulterior motives, but she didn't realize that I was about to tell her that I was going to go climb Everest. So I just said, hey, babe, I think I'm going to go climb Everest, leaving in March. So that would have been the spring of 2010. This was just before Christmas. I would have told her this. And she said, it's about time. You're not getting any younger.
Oh, my gosh.
And that was it. So
actually prepping for that to tell her you're going to go, because there's a cost to it.
Yeah. But Kevin, it's I'd rather invest in experiences, and I'd rather invest in travel than I would in anything else. I don't have a motorboat. I don't have a motorcycle. I don't golf. I've got a lot of bicycles, but I'm focused on human-powered trips and going to the remote areas of the world. I just absolutely love it. I grew up reading National Geographic and reading Farley Mowat, and this is what I love to do. So it wasn't she knows me. She didn't even question.
So when you're going there and you're getting there, the oxygen, why did you decide not to do it with oxygen?
It's a style thing. I just spoke about this on a podcast the other day. I figured that it had been done without oxygen. I love the description of how hard it was to do without oxygen. That really appealed to me. I wanted to really go into that suffering state. I tend to enjoy that, and I figured I could do it. I wasn't 100% sure until the trip, when I was super strong on that expedition. In fact, my expedition teammates were betting other teams that I would beat their Sherpas up certain carries meaning when you carry gear that day to bring it higher in the mountain, come back down. We'd leave at the same time, and they'd see, and I didn't know this, but they were betting that I would beat the Sherpas up to these points, to these camps who were dropping stuff. So I was super strong, and things were looking good. I just felt good about it. It was a fantastic trip. It was.
So how are you? So when you don't have oxygen, you're going up there, and I've never felt this before. What does that feel inside? Like, where are you feeling it? Are you getting hallucinating?
You always
are you
have
feeling
oxygen. I guess it's important to sort of explain to your viewers and your listeners that whether you're sitting here in Calgary, and we sit at about 1,000 meters, 1,050 meters, so 3,600 feet above sea level, or you're sitting on the summit of Everest at 29,000 feet above sea level, 8,848 meters, it's the same amount of oxygen. It's just that you don't have the ambient pressure to force that oxygen into the alveoli of your lungs and into your bloodstream. Because you're so high, you have less ambient pressure. Right. That's why in an airplane, we don't pump oxygen into an airplane. People think we pump air into an airplane. Right. All we do is take air that's generated by the engines and inflate the airplane to increase the pressure inside. That's why airplanes are round, the fuselage. So all we're doing is pressurizing the airplane so that we fake an altitude inside the airplane of about 8,000 feet above sea level. So when you're sitting in an airplane cruising across the pond, for example, you're sitting at about the height of the top of the Lake Louise ski hill. And that pressure forces the oxygen in your lungs. So initially to answer your question, Kevin, initially when you get to base camp on Everest, for example, that's about 17 or 18,000 feet above sea level, which is really high, plenty high enough to kill you. But you take a long time to get to that point. And then, so when you first get there, you feel sick. You feel like you've got the worst hangover. You're sort of curled up in the corner of your tent, groaning, and your head hurts, and you're lethargic, and you don't have an appetite. You just feel shitty all the time. But then slowly, after a couple of days, your body starts to produce more hemoglobin, which is the oxygen carrying part of your blood. You eventually start to grow new capillaries, and your body adapts. And the way I generally do it at altitude, if I have a good sleep, then I know I can go higher the next day. Because normally you have shitty sleeps and you have altitude sickness, or you're feeling lethargic from the altitude, you just don't feel good. So your body starts to adapt rather quickly. And what we would do is you'd climb high and then come down low, and climb high and come down low. And then when you sleep high, when you weren't quite ready, you'd feel like crap. And unbelievably, your body just... Not unbelievably, but it's pretty fantastic the way the human body can adapt to any kind of stress. And, by the time you are on the summit day, your question about what does it feel like, it's you're breathing way harder than you would normally. So to get up a flight of stairs, for example, using a sort of a pedestrian example here sitting in Calgary would be difficult. You'd be breathing really hard. And your heart rate would be elevated the whole time. Blood pressure is fairly high too, because of the fact that you have more hemoglobin, and your blood is thicker. You have to be very careful that you hydrate. You can blow capillaries in your eyes. An American climber had to go back because of severe hemorrhoids. You can have strokes, all kinds of strange stuff. And then your body starts to prioritize where the oxygen is going to go. So when your body is starved of oxygen, it starts to divert blood flow from your extremities, your toes, your feet, and it tries to keep it in your core and in your brain. And so that's why it's so easy to freeze at altitude, because of the fact that this warm oxygen-carrying blood is being diverted to where it needs to be, which is going to be your brain and obviously your heart and your lungs. So.
And anxiety must be coming in at this point too.
Anxiety?
As well. Yeah.
No.
Nothing?
No.
Man, I would go do stuff, and all of a sudden I'd get anxiety about, okay, here's what I've got to do on a big run, like a 50K run and stuff. And I get anxiety, and then all of a sudden I start listening about climbing Everest. I got to worry about this and that. Is this where the frostbite came in on your hands as well? Was it Everest?
Oh, yeah, it wasn't that cold. Like I don't think it was even minus 30 on the summit day. We're Canadians. That's not that cold, but. You got this device that you slide up and down the rope called a Jumar. It's just this friction device that slides up and then it locks, and you put your hand through the aluminum handle on it. And with big Himalayan mitts on, I had the wrong handle. I had a smaller handle, something you might use here in the Rockies. And it compressed the insulation of my mitt. And of course, my right hand froze. Plus, it is chilly, and you are starved of oxygen, so you freeze very quickly. So... But listen, freezing 3 fingers is not that big a deal. Once they're frozen, it feels like having 3 pens in your mitt. You can't feel them anymore. They don't hurt. When they thaw, that's a different story, but it's not that big of a deal.
So that you knew that where they're frozen, and you're going, well, I'm not going back yet. If I'm gonna lose the ends anyway, so I'm gonna keep going.
I didn't know I was going to lose them yet, but they froze about 3 hours out of high camp climbing up. So I still had another 14 hours to get back to camp. So yeah, you just kind of prioritize. I'm not going to go back for 3 fingers. So I mean, if it was my foot or my whole hand, then that would be different because you wouldn't be able to move.
Oh my God, yeah. Because I was wondering about those. Well, when you lose your hands, because in my industry, in the construction, guy loses his hands, it's all bloody and it's all this, and then all of a sudden, yeah, okay, here we go. We got our WCB claims and this, and all of a sudden, when I read yours about, oh yeah, and I lost 3 fingers, I'm going, okay, well, here's 3 different things. You got business side of it where we do business, and guys are losing their fingers because of this, and it's a big deal. Then all of a sudden, here you are. Oh yeah, well, it's just frozen. I'm just coming back. Like, it's 2 totally different stories. 2 different things.
Like 3 pieces of wood in your mitt that you know eventually is going to cause you some issues. But it was interesting when I came back though, Kevin. Transport Canada, because I'm an airline pilot, they sort of suspended my medical, and on the phone they called me and they said, "What do you mean? Like, I haven't seen a physician. What are you doing?" "Well, we think you may have suffered brain damage from the altitude, from lack of oxygen, and they quoted horribly mangled hand," because they'd read an article in the Edmonton Journal about my climb. So they did what's a very rare thing, was a medical flight test. So they put me in a simulator, 737 simulator. They had a Transport Canada inspector, and they're not a medical inspector, but a regular inspector, the guy that does that does flight tests and that type of thing. And they just put me through my paces. They wanted to see if I can operate all the knobs and switches, and then gave me complicated procedures and emergencies I had to do, and flying in the mountains, and it was actually super fun, but it was baseless. Everything was fine.
So they're putting you through this test, and you got to use your fingers.
Yeah, I only lost the tips. It's not that big of a deal.
So you lose the tips of it, but you still, there must be some feel. Like, how long after when you lost your fingers that you had to do this test?
Oh, they'd already been amputated, so I don't know. It was probably 3 months after I'd frozen, maybe, or 2 months after I frozen. I got them chopped off about a month after I got back to Calgary.
Yeah, because we're looking at other guys; they're not coming back to work for a year.
No. I was doing chin-ups with the bandages on my hand because you got to keep moving, right?
And so, keep going and stuff like. I also was looking at your video on that you have on your web, and it was really interesting. When you're crossing over, when you're on the boat or you're
rowing the Atlantic,
rowing the Atlantic, and it was really interesting to look at your eyes. If anybody ever sees this video and they watch it and you have the music behind you, and it's really interesting looking at your eyes and the focus. And it reminded me when you see somebody so hyper-focused that they're in the moment and that time and space, like someone's watching an out-of-body experience. Oh, yeah. And I'm looking at you and I'm watching this, and you're going through this. What was that whole feeling about? Because my feeling in taking that is like, I felt like you were an out-of-body experience. Your eyes were just there, and that as being obsessed, possessed, like it's just like, it was an awesome look.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that. I think it's a video where is the sun low in the sky and the sun's kind of red, and there's maybe high waves. And
then there's high waves, and you're right there, and your eyes you're looking around, but your head's you're standing. Your head's like this. And it's not your eyes and the focus where your eyes are at. And when you see that, that intense, it's probably fatigue, but the actual focus, because you have to be in that moment in time right there. Because there's guys that'll be doing things, and then all of a sudden, when you're present and you're truly present in the moment, you can actually see it in somebody that you're truly there, you're present, and that was like, whoa. That there's a guy that's present in the moment, focused, that there is no failure, and you're okay to die.
Yeah, I'm not ever okay to die. No, I think, if I put that out there, I'm not. No, I think that video was taken after a very long storm. It had a very long storm, and it was right around stampede time. I remember this because the guy that was doing my wind, weather, and waves, a guy named Jim Rediker, he was a flight dispatcher for Canadian North, a really good weather guy. He did my weather on Everest as well. We had been talking during the storm. It was really funny. I was at my wit's end. The boat I felt was coming apart. I was getting hit by waves, and it felt like I was in a car accident. I remember it felt like I was being hit by a minivan, like broadsided. So I sent him a satellite message, and I'm like, Jim, what's the forecast? How long is it supposed to last? And I remember he came back, goes, you're almost out of it, only another 16 hours roughly. And I remember thinking, 16 hours? I might not last 6 minutes. This is like I had my survival suit underneath me versus packed away I had my bailout checklist ready to roll. I was anticipating that the boat was going to come apart. Anyway, I got through the storm. More importantly, the boat got through the storm, and that video was taken after the storm when the water had calmed down. Even though I look at that video now, and the waves are probably almost as high as this shed, but compared to what they were when I was in the storm, it was like flat water. So
Were you actually, so during that storm, are you like going, oh, this could be it? Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't think I was going to get the chop, but I figured I was going to end up in my survival raft, in my survival suit, and waiting for rescue. I mean, hopefully waiting for rescue, but there was just nighttime storms in the North Atlantic are not fun because daytime storms, you can position yourself down waves so that when you get to the bottom, so when they get hit by another wave, you don't tumble. And at night, you can't see, but I became so one with that boat that I could actually, just by feel, get it going down the wave the right way. And just using two little ropes that were tied to the rudder, I could just, moving even a centimeter would really adjust the boat coming down a wave. And what happens at the top of a big wave is there's when you see a wave and there's the white water at the top, it's actually, there's a rotational force on the boat. So when you get to the top of the wave, the boat starts to turn, then comes down. So you have to always correct that. And it was really hard to do at night because you're just doing it by feel and you're exhausted. And so, yeah, those are tough. Those weren't fun. But, I can generally describe the discomfort of rowing the North Atlantic, or generally describe how hard it is to hike up, climb Everest without oxygen, but we are designed to forget pain. And I say this all the time, that it's been said that if humans remembered pain, a woman would only have one child. So I can better describe the sunsets and the whales beside me and all the wildlife I saw, or the people I met on Everest, or the Himalayan blue sheep I saw in your base camp, or those types of things. It's difficult to really adequately describe the tough times, which is people want to know about that. I think we all want to know what happens when you see a ship or a small boat disappear over the ocean horizon. You want to know what happened on the other side. Or if you see a climber on a high ridge and they disappear into the clouds, you want to know what's going on on the other side of the ridge or in those clouds. And that's why I do it. But when you come down, it's difficult to describe.
Right. Yeah. And then how do you look at your mindset, like to have a clear mindset on everything you do, the goals that you have to achieve and everything? Like, what does that mindset look like to you?
Well, you have to, I make lists of what I need to get done. So there's no checklist. Maybe there is now. It's 2016 when I rode the North Atlantic, but I'm a prairie boy from northern Alberta. I had never been on the ocean other than on a ferry and sea kayaking in the Queen Charlottes. And, I didn't know anything about the ocean. Obviously, I studied and did my yacht master training and ocean rescue training and everything I could before I went on the boat. But I had to make a list. I had to say, okay, I need to learn this. I have to be trained on this. I've got to talk to this person. I need this equipment. Read voraciously on it. Watched everything I could on it, and then built a checklist of what was required for me to be on that dock in Halifax at 5:45 in the morning before I shoved off. And so that kept me focused, right? You take a giant goal like that, and often the hardest part is getting to the start and then kicking off. And then you just take it in chunks. But it's really difficult when you set a massive goal like that to step out the door or shove off the dock or unzip the tent and step out. That's why my slogan is step out, shove off, because those are difficult times. And the Norwegians even have a word for it. It's called doorstoppmila, which means the first mile either before the door or after the door. It's very difficult to get to the door, and it's very difficult to do that first move. Right. And so mindset wise, I mean, I don't actively think about mindset. It's just something that you go through, and you focus on the end goal, but then you take it in small bits as you're going. Because when you think about over 5,000 kilometer ocean row, it's pretty intimidating to think about something that big and how long it's going to take and what's going to happen beyond the ocean's horizon. And but you have to be practical, and you have to be fearful of the things that really matter, and not get too in your own head about things that could go wrong. So, and confidence comes with doing this, right? I mean, it comes with being an airline captain and having climbed all over the world and having been through some tough situations, and you realize that you have a certain level of confidence. I mean, you talked about building your shed here, your studio. I'd be very intimidated to try and build a studio like this. You wouldn't, because you've done it before.
Right.
You may be intimidated to put together a row across the Atlantic. I wouldn't be as intimidated because I've done it before. So it's all about familiarity and wanting to take on challenges and loving it, loving all the stuff that can go wrong too.
And it's interesting when you're talking about, we all have goals, and we all say, okay, we're going to set them up. Okay, like you said, okay, the beginning is the hardest, and we get going into the goal. So you've done some pretty amazing stuff, and you start listening to this, and we're 54, I'm 55, 54, and when you look at it and you look back and it's amazing, is there a time, so here we are now, what's our next goal? Because sometimes you feel, I've accomplished, from my experience, I feel, I've accomplished this, but now there's more to it, and those goals get loftier and bigger. And when you look at yours, and I'm going, okay, is there, what's the next step of greatness?
Yeah, greatness and my name don't go together. I don't think there's any greatness involved, but I've always have to have something to aim for, right? I love the joy I get in having a goal, and it's a creative thing. I think you pull something audacious that scares you a little bit, and you pull it off, and it's something it's hard to describe, but it also can be dangerous, especially if you're doing the stuff that I do. If you continue to do these trips, I mean, you're gonna obviously you can get to the edge sometimes, or even over the edge, and you've got to be very careful. So I am aware of that. I do have kids and a wife, and this I think it's complete bullshit when people say at least he died doing what he loves. When I've been doing what I love and I've come close to death, it's not fun. I'm not thinking, well, this is great. When I'm hanging in the bottom of a crevasse and a rope that I've fallen into, there's nothing noble about it.
No, and you're sitting there and you're going, why did I do this? And why did I put myself in a situation that I don't need to put yourself into? Yep. And then that growth just becomes exponential to where you're at.
Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, I get scared a lot out there, and I think that's what helps keep me alive. I'm just like everybody else. I have the same fears. I mean, I might be used to different things because of what I do, but I'm just a scared little boy sometimes. I was when I was 8 years old, and I had to leave the light on, and it's I mean, I used to be scared to take a bath by myself as a little boy. I was scared of the dark, and and I think that might be one of the reasons that I push myself now.
So now you've done all this, and now the scariest part, let's not talk about the adventure stuff. So you've come back, you've done the adventure stuff, you've done a lot of podcasts, you've done a lot of interviews with people, and then now you're getting into the public speaking. Now, you're very comfortable with public speaking, correct, to talk about your story. Now getting into this next, what scares you? Okay, not necessarily the adventure side.
Yeah.
What's the other stuff that scares?
Something going. We lost a son, which was absolutely the worst thing that could ever happen. It makes anything I do pale in comparison. It's still something that's incredibly hard and difficult to deal with. So I think that has really inoculated me against. I've been given this permanent injection of sadness, but Jan and I have also very deliberately decided that you have to keep living. Right. So I think I'm losing a child is something in our culture that's unusual. Thank God. In other cultures or other parts of the world, I should say, maybe not cultures, where life is far more difficult, it's not that unusual. I don't think we're unique because we've lost a child, but or that we've lost a loved one in our life. But I think that we can all learn from what others have been through that have been through horrible tragedy like that. And I think it's made, I don't want to get anything positive out of losing Richard, but we have been able to continue to laugh, continue to travel, continue to see the world, talk about him every day. But yeah, there is that, that scares the hell out of me that I ever go through that again with the remaining two kids. So, you know, you've got this very simple goal of just trying to outlive your kids of your kids outliving you, the opposite. And so that scares me. But what really scares me, Kevin, is not being able to do this, what I do. Like, I'm always looking for something, whether it's, you know, I always want to be able to pull off these trips. I mean, for myself, I love planning something and then being on the summit, or having crossed this, you know, whatever, a jungle or whatever it may be, or a desert. And I love living that. I love living in the pages of a National Geographic, and it's I think it's something that all of us have in us, and so I'm very fortunate. But yeah, so that scares me, not being able to do it. And as you age, that's something that you may have to start to think about, right? But I haven't slowed down. I'm in the Adventure Racing World Championships in October in South Africa, and then I'm climbing in Uganda in December. And you know, this stuff is continuing to go, and I'm feeling great. I've got no injuries, no issues. I can still hammer.
Yeah. So what would you say with somebody at 55? Okay, because there's a lot of guys that are sitting on the couch, not doing anything. They wish they shoulda, coulda, woulda, to just to say, you know what? Life begins now where you're at, guys. Yes, you're 20. You've been doing this forever, but being in shape, getting to the next level, you can still do things.
Yeah, I can't even stand the question. I just think it's ridiculous that people. No, it's nothing aimed at you, but it's such a common question. Like you know, I've got people I fly with here. Oh, I'm 40 now. I can't pull. I'm like, I was 42 and I climbed Everest.
Yeah.
I think we get into this mindset of maybe previous generations where we think that 50 is old, but 50 is not a 50-year-old from 20 years ago.
No, and I look at when I was 50, I was 240 pounds. So going in there and having them and drinking. So drinking, yes, I own a bunch of businesses, and all of a sudden changing my lifestyle to go into something totally different. Like, and it was all about mindset. So when you watch somebody, and I look at you through when you were a kid growing up, and you see how consistent you are all the way through as an individual. And then all of a sudden I come in and this is where that question of being 50 is that, when does that aha moment come into play? Is that, listen, wait a second, I better start looking after myself to get to that next level, or else I never will. When do you start? And that at 50 was like, wait a second, this is the greatest time of my life that I've ever been in for growth and potential.
Yeah. Well, let me flip the tables on you, and then I'll answer your question. What caused you to go from 240 pounds to being fit?
Yeah, the 240 pounds is all of a sudden I had sleep apnea. I had gout. I had cancer, bladder cancer. And then all of a sudden it was just a mess. I had money. But the whole idea of the whole question was all of a sudden, wait a second, where am I going to be? What am I going to do? What's my integrity? Do I truly love myself? And it came into, and I asked you that question earlier about death. Are you okay to die? And I remember asking myself, am I okay to die? Meaning, did my bucket list and did this? And it was one of the things that I had to come to reality was like, I better love myself to truly who I am.
But was there one moment? Did you look in the mirror? Did you turn sideways? Did you sprain your ankle? Was there one thing?
It was on November 25th.
Now we're drilling down.
The drill down was November 25th. I said, I'm not going to have another drink. I'm done. And it was just, I was done. And then I was like, I wonder if I took my mind and do professional bodybuilding. I said, how hard would it go into and do bodybuilding in a world stage? Okay, 240, and say, take your mind and everything so focused and see how determined. And then that was the whole thing, was to see what does it take mindset to truly flip around in a day, because change happens instantly. And once that happened, it was like, whoa. And then the next thing, the next win. And it was like, whoa. And it was a wake up call to all of a sudden, wait, I could do anything. So that's where the story comes in. The storytelling at 50 was like, wait a second, the story I'm going to tell myself, I can go to the next level. And listening to you, you already had that all the way through. So that's inspirational. That's inspiring. And it's just like, yeah, that's exactly that eye, they call it the eye of the tiger, you know, the Sylvester Stallone back in the day, and then you see that in someone's eye, and then you can actually feel it and get that feeling across. As when I just saw your website and saw that emotion to me, when I saw that, gave me that aha, like, that's it. That one time, that 1 second changed my life. Just watching that and saying, yeah, that's the focus that I see that somebody has to have, and people see it. You want to see it? There it is. And it's a moment.
And we talk about this a lot. I've talked about this during when I do my public speaking. We talk about it on the podcast that I have, Adventure Audio. And the way I see it, it's like you're that silver ball rolling down the pinball table, and there's the flippers that deflect you in different directions. And you can either be deflected to 240 pounds and drinking too much and goat, or you can be and focused more on money than you are on your fitness or your health, or you can get deflected into health and fitness, traveling, picking up experiences, maybe getting out of a crappy relationship or something like that. But sometimes it's almost out of our control. And the example I use is our youngest son, Eric. He's 21 years old. The year after we lost his brother, him and I, in the Northwest Territories, canoed the river where his brother was killed as a way for me to deal with it, especially. And we had to fly in a small bush plane up to this indigenous village up on Great Bear Lake, Delaney, this beautiful place. And the pilot of the single-engine Cessna that flew us in there said to Eric, his name is Louis Lawrence, he flies for Air Canada now. He said, Eric, do you want to ride up front? Because it's a single-pilot airplane. And Eric said, sure. So he rode up front. Little kid, he was 14 years old. And a couple days later, we're on the side of the Great Bear River, him and I, laying in the tent just before we fell asleep. And he said, hey, Pops, I think I want to become a pilot. I said, oh, cool. I said, what brought that on? He said, just looking at Louis flying the airplane and all the switches and buttons and stuff, it seems cool. So my point is that flipper was Louis inviting him to the cockpit. Right. Even though I'm a pilot and he'd ridden up with me, and you know, sometimes what's run right under your nose you don't want to do. And that now he's an airline pilot. He's 21 years old, flies for the same airline I fly for. So that's how fickle life can be. But I think what we need to do sometimes is to actually hit the buttons on the side of that pinball machine and deflect ourselves, hit the paddles so that they deflect us in the correct direction. And sometimes it takes 50 years to find it. For me, I can actually remember very clearly that it was a love of reading about travel, a love of reading about adventure, sort of typical boy adventures. And the fact that my mom was, playing volleyball and softball and canoe racing when I was a little kid growing up, seeing her do that. And I remember once I asked her, I said, Mom, how do you have such a flat stomach? I was 8 years old. And she goes, I just hold it in all the time. And I stand up straight, hold it in, and I exercise. And from that day onwards, I have focused heavily on staying healthy. And I preach this to the young first officers that fly with. The most important thing you'll ever do in your life is look after your health. And number two is pick the correct spouse. And if you get both of those right, you really set yourself up for success. So yeah, I mean, your paddle was this whole cornucopia of shit, gout, bladder cancer, obviously all the stuff that goes with being 240 pounds and a 5'10" guy. That's
sleep apnea,
sleep apnea, and obviously running a bunch of businesses, which isn't healthy. To combine all the stresses of that together, and probably the greatest thing you've ever done in your life, my guess, looking back in it 4 years now, is to get a hold of your health, right?
Oh, and health is the most important thing ever.
It really is. You can't do anything without it.
Yes.
I mean, if you're unhealthy, and I mean, it goes right down to being with your spouse. And she, if your wife says, "Well, let's do this. Let's go for a walk," you're like, "I can't." My toes sore from gout, or you know what I mean. It's so important. You can't play with your kids. You can't travel. You can't sit in an airline seat. Like, I don't know. I find it to be one of the the best investment you can make is your fitness. And your health.
It truly is one of the best because of, I got guys that have heart attacks, and then once they're on the pills, it's like, guys, now you're not proactive, you're reactive. And now it's like, you can't go for that walk. You can't do that. So it's like, okay, let's begin today, because today starts today.
And I do think now we live in a society where we want a quick fix for everything. And you have to realize that it takes an effort to stay healthy, but you have to make it as natural as brushing your teeth. Everybody brushes their teeth, I hope, before they go to bed, and everybody brushes their teeth in the morning. Nobody ever questions that. If I ask you that, you go, "Of course I do." You shrug your shoulders. Yeah. But I say, "Do you work out every day?" The vast majority of the population, the last time they sort of focused on their fitness is grade 12 phys ed class.
Right. And what in life is their non-negotiables? What are you in life? What is your non-negotiable that you're not going to give up or whatever? What's your integrity as a human being, and what you're going to do to give back to yourself? That makes you valuable.
You owe it to your family.
Yes.
Because if you don't look after yourself, they're the ones left holding the bag when either you check out early, or you're unable to do stuff, or you're unable to look after yourself. So I don't want to focus too much on that, but so it's interesting that you had that pinball paddle deflect you in the right way, or that ball could be sitting in the hole right now.
Well, game over. How true that is.
Game over.
Well, Laval, thank you very much for joining me and on Shed Talk and everything that we've been doing. So thank you very much. And is there anything you want to sum up with of curiosity for yourself?
No, just don't wait until tomorrow. I'm an airline pilot, and we are all running out of runway. I don't care if you're 21 or if you're 55, that we're all running out of runway, and you want to get airborne and get stuff done, because it goes quickly. So life is short.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you.
Now you know. Shed Talk.